which I may talk about in a minute or may not, depending on where things go, and things I liked about it. I mean, the Da Vinci Code is another example of a book that's not a particularly good book, but is very compelling to read. And I found The Martian a bit like that. I always had to read the next chapter because it had certain hooks through it that were very clever, much like the Da Vinci Code does. And you can sit back and be sniffy about the Da Vinci Code and say, oh, it's not a good book. But when you're reading the Da Vinci Code, it's like heroin, and you had to read the next chapter. And I found The Martian a bit like that. The Martian is a bit like, I cannot stop because I have to read the next chapter. And it's not because I can't wait to see what brilliant turn of phrase is going to be used. It's for other reasons. But
it's interesting to hear you say that you felt compelled to read it, because I did not feel that way at all.
Right.
And I was so close to putting down the book. So for those who haven't read it, this is no spoiler. It starts off straight away with the premise that a man has been left on Mars after a space expedition there, and a storm has forced the rest of his crew to retreat.
yeah,
And it starts off as this first-person narrative, basically of him saying he's on Mars and he's screwed and he's injured, and how is he going to try and survive on the planet?
yeah,
Which is a good premise for a book. Right? It's a compelling story about a man trying to survive.
yeah. It's sort of Castaway in space.
Perfect. That's how you would pitch the movie. That might very well be how the movie was pitched. It's Castaway in space. And we should come back to the movie trailer later. But I'm reading it, and the first 7 chapters are all told from the first person perspective of this guy. And
Mark Watney is the hero.
so I found the first 2 chapters, I'm like, oh, okay, this is an interesting premise. It's good so far. But after about chapter 2, all I could think of as I'm reading this book was technobabble on Star Trek. And in Star Trek, they always have technobabble, which boils down to someone says something is broken. And then another person has a made-up series of nonsense words about how they're going to fix whatever the thing is. And it just always feels like, can we just move past this? Like, why does this always have to be the plot point of made-up problem, made-up solution, neither of which matters? It just matters that the thing got fixed.
I don't remember thinking that, to be fair, in the book. I do remember getting fatigued by the number of things that break and then get fixed. It's a bit like, okay, here we go again. But I never remember thinking, oh, that would never happen, and that solution seems fudged. I always thought, well, that probably would happen on Mars, and that probably is a way you could fix it. So while I found it a bit repetitive in that sense, I don't remember thinking technobabble.
This is why I think people would think that I'd like it, because they're plausible solutions. He's actually talking about actual things. So I have a little segment here that's highlighted as a passage from the book where he says, I need to ration my EVAs as well as food. The CO2 filters are not cleanable. Once they're saturated, they're done. The mission accounted for a 4-hour EVA per crew per member per day. Fortunately, CO2 filters are light and small. All told, I have about 1,500 hours of CO2 filters. After that, and then he goes on and on with this description about all of the equipment.
Yeah.
And I find it kind of frustrating because it's almost like it's written as though it's a real story, but I can't get past the fact that everything in it is made up, right? That the author is providing the character with a certain number of air filters that he's going to be able to get through, or like descriptions of machines that have to be connected, basically Apollo 13 style, right? Of, oh, we have this square peg to fit in this round hole. But I'm just constantly aware of the author as creator of problems for which the character Mark is going to give me far too detailed descriptions of how to fix them. And I just found it really, really tedious in the first 7 chapters.
I did feel sometimes, sort of talking to that point, but from a slightly different angle, I thought, again, my memory's not as good as yours because it was a longer time ago, but I thought the problem there was more a case of the author was trying to justify everything. Like he was trying to show that he'd done the math to show that this is what would happen. It's a bit like, okay, you don't need to prove to me that he has this many filters for this reason because this and that, and this is what would have happened if the disaster hadn't struck. It was a bit like, all right, okay, man, it's all right. You know, like, you've done your homework. I know you've done your homework. It doesn't mean you have to show me all you're working out.
Exactly. I'm randomly flipping through the book on my my computer, and I just stopped at another sentence. To be viable, soil needs 40 liters of water per cubic meter. My overall plan calls for 9.2 cubic meters of soil, so I'll eventually need 368 liters of water. And it's like, God damn it, dude. Like, I don't need all of this. It is just too much. And I'm flipping through pages, and the number of okay, 2 pages over, right? This is like several paragraphs after the thing that I just read you. In 62 square meters, I could grow maybe 150 kilograms of potatoes in 400 days. That's a grand total of 1,150 calories, a sustainable average of 200. It's like, it just flip. I flip over to the next page. Okay, there's numbers all over that page. I flip over to the next page. There's numbers on this page. Flip over. There's no numbers on this page, finally. Oh, no, there is. There's a number 106 in the middle. I'm flipping over again. There are at least 20 numbers on this page. And it's just forever. I almost don't know why, like, I made it through this first section, but I was at whatever it was, chapter 6, and I said to myself in my head, if the next chapter is like this, I'm just going to stop. Like, I'm not going to go any further because I cannot stand this. And perhaps unfortunate for me, again, not like I didn't like the book, but I could have done something better with my time on the flight. The very next chapter is where it finally switches perspective, and it goes to NASA headquarters and them trying to figure out what has happened. And so I thought, okay, book, I'm going to give you a little bit more time, because maybe you just wanted to establish all of this. But for me, it was unfortunate because there was just enough of the other stuff that I ended up feeling like I'm going to keep finishing this book. But all things told, I would rather have read a different book